We're well into the Christmas season, and I guess one thing all people want for Christmas is to be happy. Happiness is associated with Christmas, and I guess we feel if we're not happy around Christmas, then there's something wrong. So today I'd like for us to talk about the opposite of that, the state of being not happy. Now, as our gospel reading, we heard what are called the Beatitudes. The word beatitude literally means a state of great joy. Now, if you look at some of those, though, it's hard to see how those people could be in a state of great joy. People who mourn, the hungry, the persecuted. How could people like that be in a state of great joy? There's a passage from the Old Testament book of Ecclesiastes that's one of the most well-known passages of the Old Testament. It goes like this: there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather them. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to search and a time to give up. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to mend. A time to be silent and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. Notice how this sort of dovetails with what we talked about last week of time going in a circle. But I wanted you to notice there is a time to weep. There is a time to mourn. Sometimes I think people are obsessed with being happy. We can't really put our finger on what it would mean to be happy. It's hard to define exactly what happy means. But whatever it is, we just know that's what we want to be. A lot of times we make happiness conditional. I'd be happy if, whatever. If I had a better job, I'd be happy. If my children would settle down and not cause so much trouble, I'd be happy. If I could live in a different town, I'd be happy. If I could get rid of that pain in my knee, I'd be happy. So we make it conditional on if, then I'd be happy. Then we get a better job. Our children quit causing trouble. We get a knee replacement. Are we then happy? Or do we come up with yet another list of, well, if so-and-so, I could be happy? If we're not happy, we're failures. Because after all, we're supposed to be happy. What's wrong with me? We get the idea we're never supposed to be sad. If we're sad, there's something wrong and we need to correct it. Because we shouldn't be sad, we should be happy all the time. But yet we just heard from Ecclesiastes, there is a time for everything. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. We heard Jesus say, blessed are they that mourn. There will be times of our lives when we're sad, and that's okay. There's a book in the Old Testament called Jeremiah. Jeremiah was a prophet. He prophesied for some 40 years during the last 40 years before the destruction of Judah by the Babylonians. He had some very forceful words to say against the people of Judah, how they had turned their backs on God, and as you can imagine, they liked what he had to say. And so they treated him very badly. In Jeremiah, if you read that book, there's a lot of times he's depressed and he wants to sit down and cry. And he sometimes gets the nickname the weeping prophet or the prophet of tears because he's talking about crying and weeping so much. He just gets so depressed because people have turned their backs on God. We heard him say, "Oh, that my head were a spring of water and my eyes a fountain of tears. I would weep day and night for the slain of my people." And yet it was his faith in God that kept him going. He who would sit down and say, "I just want to sit down and cry my eyes out," also said, "Sing to the Lord. Give praise to the Lord. He rescues the life of the needy from the hands of the wicked. The Lord, my strength and my fortress, my refuge in time of distress." Jeremiah's life did not turn out well. People got tired of hearing how he kept telling them they were turning their backs on God, and they finally shipped him off down into Egypt. And it's believed that's where he died. Yet he could still say of God, "My strength and my fortress, my refuge in time of distress." The prophet Jonah in the Old Testament also went through a period of sadness, as did Naomi in the book of Ruth, as did the prophet Elijah. He sat down and just said, "Lord, take my life away from me." So even the big biblical figures themselves went through periods of sadness. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Jesus went to the Garden of Gethsemane before his arrest. He told the disciples, "My soul is extremely sorrowful." And it says that while he was there, he sweated as if it were drops of blood. We saw Jesus weep over Jerusalem earlier. We saw Jesus weep when his friend Lazarus died. Sadness is a natural human emotion. No one will be happy all the time. It's unreasonable for us to expect ourselves to be. The reason is because life has a lot of sadness in it. You know, underneath even the good times is an undertone of sadness. I remember telling someone after Thanksgiving this year, I said, "You know, I always get depressed on holidays because I wonder at this age, I wonder if we'll live to see another one." So whenever Thanksgiving was, I couldn't help but think on Thanksgiving evening, we had a great Thanksgiving, but I couldn't help but think, we both might not be here this time, or might not be able to do it. So even the good times have an undertone of sadness. Loss and change are part of life. We know a lot of people now who are sick and dying. And one was talking about that yesterday, how, gosh, we just know some people, and they're not all that much older than we are. And we talked about how when we were younger, most of the, first of all, we were younger, most of the people who died were our grandparents' generation. Then as we reached middle age, most of the people who died were our parents' generation. But now it's people of our generation, people that our lives were intertwined with. Even when we move on to a better stage of life, we lose something because we lose what we left behind. A woman told me one time that when her young son began to walk, she experienced a grief reaction. She lost her baby, you see. He grew up. She no longer had a baby to carry around. He grew up and was an independent person now. The baby stage was over. And she said that to her was a loss. She said it was almost like he had died because she said he was not a baby anymore. I remember when I went to college. Now, when I was growing up, I spent most Friday and every Saturday nights with my grandmother. We'd get up on Sunday morning and have breakfast. My father would come and get me. And when I started driving, of course, I just drive myself home. But I remember the last Sunday morning, before I would go to Chapel Hill on a Friday. Now, my grandmother and I both knew that that would be the end of an 18-year streak of me staying there like that. but neither one of us said anything. Then when I got ready to leave that morning, we both teared up. And she said we had something special. And then I left. Now, what was a happy time, exciting, me going off to college and beginning life, that's sort of like your first foray into independence. Also involved sadness, because we were losing something, that 18-year streak. And she was losing her grandson being there the weekend. That's not that I never saw her. It never was the same. So life is full of little losses like that, one after another. With every change comes a loss. We have a scanner at our house. And every year on December the 31st, apparently a lot of people in law enforcement, the EMS, and the fire department retire, because they'll sign off on the radio for the last time. And then their fellow officers or fellow firefighters or whatever will get on there and say, oh, have a wonderful retirement, congratulations, all this, that, and the other. But I always like to turn that off on New Year's Eve because it makes me sad to hear that. You see, retirement may seem to be a joyful time, and I guess it is. You don't have to worry about work anymore. Your clock doesn't walk at 6 o'clock every morning anymore. But it's also a loss, because those years you worked were your best years, your young years. Those years you worked were the best years of your life, and now they're over. You're not 35 years old anymore in the prime of your life with your children at home. All that is behind you. Your life has largely been lived. And while we may not consciously think of that, it's in the backs of our minds. Some people have celebrations for their 50th wedding anniversary, and it's happy. But there's a twinge of sadness because those years behind you were your best years. The years that you could do things. The easy years. They may not have seemed easy at the time, but compared to what you'll face after being married 50 years, they are, because then will be the time of your decline. And you will never have another, you won't have 100th anniversary, you know that. So your married life is way, way more than half over then. The book of Ecclesiastes says something very interesting, something to pause and think about. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by a sad countenance the heart is made better. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. So the heart is made better by sadness. Being wise is associated with sadness, while being foolish is associated with making merry. That's odd, isn't it, to be coming from God. Studies have shown, though, that sadness increases creativity. That's very interesting. Sadness increases creativity. And when I heard that, I immediately thought of songs. Don Gibson over here, I Can't Stop Loving You. Hank Williams, Your Cheating Heart. Barbara Streisand, Misty Watercolored Memories of the Way We Were. Songs with a tinge of sadness tend to last. They are iconic. Who can remember, really, Achy Breaky Heart, and We Were Swinging, and all that stuff. But they remember, I Can't Stop Loving You. And they remember, She Stopped Loving Me Today. They put a wreath upon her door. So the most beautiful music, the music that really stirs the soul, is not that loud, fast, boisterous music. The music that touches us and goes inside us is the music that has just a tinge of sadness. Why? Because we all know that sadness is a part of life, and that music reaches down and touches that part of our soul that knows that. That's why sadness touches a chord within us, and that's why that music is the iconic music, the music that lasts. You know, there is something profoundly sad about our life here on earth. There really is. We have to face a lot of hurdles in life. I know a lot of the hurdles that many of you have faced. And you know some of the ones I've faced. I've faced a lot. Wanda's faced a lot. Each one of us has faced our own hurdles in life. In our lives, you know, some of our lives are not going to end well. Unless we have a heart attack and die suddenly or get killed in a wreck or something, some of us will face a period of extended sickness and decline. We might die for several years. Gradual decline. You get worse and worse slowly. You become a shadow of your former self. That's the fate that awaits many people. And even if we don't end up like that, we'll maybe have to watch our spouse end up like that. Might have to watch one of our children end up like that if we live long enough. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that we mope around with our heads down all the time, but the reality is that life has a tinge of sadness to it. We can try to deny it and say, oh, well, I'm not thinking about that. But whether you think you're thinking about that or not, you are thinking about that. It is in the back of your mind. Snap out of it. Snap out of it, they say. Snap out of it doesn't work. We should not try to deny the background of sadness in life. We shouldn't let ourselves be overcome by it, but neither should we deny it. Just as we saw in the account of Jeremiah, sometimes sadness can make us say, praise the Lord, He saves His people. There are joys in life, and we should enjoy those joys. But we should allow ourselves also to be sad without letting ourselves feel there's something wrong with us. In John chapter 16, Jesus says, in the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. The word translated there as tribulation means to be squeezed, to be mashed under pressure. It's used to refer to major hardships and major troubles in life. And Jesus tells us you will have major hardships in life. He tells us that. But what does He tell us to do? Does He say ignore it? Does He say, look folks, you're going to have major hardships in life, but just go on and be happy. Just think of something happy and go on. Sometimes the Bible's verse there gets mistranslated in some of these modern translations. That I read was a mistranslation, be of good cheer. What it literally means is have courage in the sense of being bold and daring. That's what that word literally means there. So what Jesus is saying, in the world you will be squeezed and you will be under a lot of pressure. You'll have a lot of things wrong. But be bold and daring. So that's how we deal with it. Be bold and daring. And why should we be bold and daring? Because I have overcome the world. Literally, Jesus says, because I have conquered the world. And so in the face of all things that cause us sadness, Jesus doesn't say, oh, cheer up, think of something else. Ignore it. Just don't think about that. Think of something else. No, just don't think about that. Jesus says, In the face of all that, be bold and daring, and you can be bold and daring, for I have conquered it all. You see, we know that when we get to the end, we'll find out that Jesus conquered it all. When we claw our way to the end of life, and sometimes it does feel like we're clawing our way through, but when we claw our way to the end of life, the one we'll be standing there is Jesus, the victor. There's an illustration that I really like. It pictures an army trying to take a hill. And it pictures a hill over here that part of the army has already taken. And so the soldiers on this side are up there at the top of the hill victorious. And on this side, they're still trying to take the hill. And the ones over here tell them, fight to the death, and the city will be yours, as now is in ours. You see, you can't give up. You're taking the hill. And you're going to take that hill and have that attitude in life as long as it takes. If you never give up, if you keep clawing, if you fight to the death, then the one you will see standing there is Jesus. This is a second line. I know that my Redeemer lives, and that at the last he shall stand upon the earth. And though the worms have destroyed my body, yet shall he raise me up. And in my own body, with my own eyes, will I see God, who is my friend and not a stranger. That, more than anything else there, I think, encompasses Christianity. Christmas, Easter, Good Friday, Pentecost, all of it together. That encompasses all of Christianity.